Welcome to Pharmacovigilance Podcast. I'm your host, Julia Appelskog, and today we'll speak about how to move from financial service to pharmacovigilance. I'm very excited to meet my guest today in the studio. Can you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, Julia. How are you doing?
I'm good.
So my name is Sabita Mukherjee, and I'm the COO and Joint Owner of Essjay Solutions and also COO of Sagittal Pharma Consulting. I spent over 30 years in financial services, working in technology, in change, in governance roles across several banks and consultancies. And about a year ago, I made a rather unexpected transition into PV, joining Essjay Solutions and helping the launch of Sagittal Pharma Consulting alongside my wife, Dr. Seema Jaitley. I think what's been fascinating for me is bringing experience from one highly regulated industry into another, particularly around things like governance, technology, and more recently, the role of AI that it can play in regulated environments. And I guess we'll be doing a lot of talking around that today. I should mention, Julia, how we met.
Yes, you found me.
Yeah,
The Drug Safety Congress, you found me.
So as I transitioned into PV, I was desperately looking for written text, not online text, but written, actual physical printed matter, because I love touching books, written text in AI and PV, and came across your book, which was amazing. And you know what? Shameless plug for you. There we go. There's Julia's books there. Then I attended World Drug Safety in Amsterdam in October last year, and you were presenting. And I had to grab the chance to speak with you after your talk, which was also amazing. And I told you about my transition story from finance to PV. And you said, what a great idea for one of your podcasts. And here we are.
It is, because you do have this unique background from financial service. I also, in my previous career, was working on the clinical trial, and there is a lot of idea in this borderline between sciences coming together. So what is the difference between regulation in finance and pharmacovigilance? What's the similarity?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting. On paper, I'd say finance and pharmacovigilance, they're both really heavily regulated industries.
Yes.
But the instinct behind the regulation, me, feels very different. In banking, particularly when you deal with regulators like PRA and the FCA, regulation often
We
felt...
need to say what's PRA.
Yeah, it's the Prudential, I beg your pardon, there you go. It's the Prudential Regulatory Authority and the Financial Conduct Authority. Okay. And regulation often felt, as I said, defensive or engineered. There was a strong sense, don't get fined, don't get on the wrong side of the regulator, build the control framework. I felt sometimes regulation felt like the cost of doing business, not because people didn't care, they absolutely did, but the commercial pressure, it was always in the room. Things like revenue targets, competition, shareholder expectations. So you always felt that regulatory programs were often triggered because the regulator expected them. So we talked a lot about remediation, fixing problems, less about regulation by design. Now, your question about comparing, how do we compare that and contrast that to PV? In PV, I think the tone feels completely different. Compliance doesn't feel defensive, it feels very personal. When PV professionals talk about regulation, they rarely start with fines. They start with patience, with safety, consequences of doing something wrong. And for me, that's where the psychology is, it's completely different. And a good example, I'd say, is particularly around the approach to AI and how regulators are dealing with innovation in this space. So if you take the COM's working group in AI in PV, it's not saying don't use AI. It's saying here's how to think about it.
How to use in the compliant way.
Exactly. And I think that's quite refreshing.
On the car.
Yeah.
But just please put your seatbelt, right?
Drive the car, but drive it safely. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Here's how to govern it, and here's how to remain accountable. And I think the EMA and FDA have aligned on 10 principles as well of good AI practice across the medicine's life cycle. And that sends a clear signal. It's not let's move fast and hope. It's about, I love your seatbelt analogy, by the way. The message is AI must reinforce quality and safety. It can't weaken them. It's be reliable, be transparent, governed. And to me, that's refreshing. Instead of regulation arriving after the failure, it feels like regulation is walking alongside innovation. And again, going back to your original question, both industries are regulated, both take compliance seriously, but in finance, regulation protects money, market, and clients. In PV, regulation protects patients. Both are strict, but the emotional weight feels very different behind them.
That's really great. I like how you put it. Not drive by the fear to fail or fear of getting fines, but rather looking how to protect patient and how we can do it more efficient.
That's right.
And if we continue in the same, speaking about the regulation and the governance, that's actually the topic I was thinking maybe would be the next book about governance of AI. So how do you see it? How we can describe how to build governance, how to put governance of AI in place?
So that's really fascinating because I think again, looking at how we can learn from both industries, or how both industries can learn from each other. It's AI decisions need to be explainable, but the accountability must always remain with the human. And for me, AI in any regulated industry should be co-pilot. And I say co-pilot with a small c and a small p, not autopilot. And in finance, we learned sometimes the hard way that if you deploy models that you don't fully understand, you create a systemic risk. Regulators were very clear about governance models. Explainability, it wasn't optional. You had to demonstrate how a decision was reached. And when something goes wrong in banking and finance, the question always is and always will be, who signed this off? And there was always a senior manager somewhere with their name attached. Now, if you bring that into PV, the stakes, as I said, are higher. If AI helps prioritize cases or supports signal detection, that's really powerful. But if we ever reach a point where someone says the system decided, and that becomes the end of the discussion, that to me is really dangerous. And in PV, medical judgment, it can't be outsourced to an algorithm. It can be supported, it can be enhanced, it can be made more efficient, but you can't replace that judgment. And so is this where PV has the chance to move ahead of finance? Because let's build, I mentioned earlier in the previous question that the regulations got to be built alongside innovation. So you can build AI adoption from day one, build into your model, into your governance, explainability, audibility, human oversight, governance, accountability. So build those controls in now rather than retrofitting them, and it should reduce the noise. It should help experts spend more time thinking, less time processing, I guess.
We spoke about the regulations and how regulated the both fields. What about audit? Is there any advice for the hive survival kit and how to survive, and how do you see on this?
Audit's an interesting one because accountability and how the model came to its ultimate conclusion is always a question that auditors ask. One of the challenges with most AI type models is if you ask a question today, you ask the same question tomorrow, you may get a different answer. So trying to explain explainability, accountability, and decision making is absolutely key. And I think auditors are there to ensure that we are heading in the right direction in our use of AI. So again, let's use auditors as our colleagues and friends rather than those that are trying to limit us in our development of AI.
Another question I would like to ask you is regarding crisis management, because working in the PV, we always have this business continuity plan in the mind, and Same in the finance crisis, crash can happen anytime, everything go fast and very dramatically. So what would be your advice for the crisis management?
So I think, again, understanding the decisions and the decision process around AI is absolutely key. So I remember when AI first came on the scene in finance, it was when generative AI was hitting the scene, particularly things like ChatGPT, and it became available to everyone. And I think the immediate reaction in many institutions was caution, almost bordering on shutdown. Instead of asking how do we put guardrails around this, the instinct was we need a policy that says this cannot be used. Access was blocked, risk was contained. And I remember sitting in discussions thinking this is absolutely pivotal. A lot of people tried to change that mindset, but my view wasn't that banning it doesn't make it go away. It pushes it underground. You should be trying to learn safely, not pretending that it doesn't exist. But as you know, in large corporates, it's hard to move against the tide. So if you fast forward to PV, I think the experience is quite different. It's not blind enthusiasm. It's moving controlled with a level of curiosity, I would say.
So from the practical point of view, can you explain how do you work with AI? What does it mean for you, AI and PV? How you implement it?
So we're in our company where we're helping PV professionals understand AI and tools like ChatGPT. We're presenting at our company conferences and our meetings. We've written blogs. We've launched a fortnightly newsletter focused on AI and PV, and internally we're starting an internal proof of concept using our own company data. I think what excites me the most is that I've probably been more progressive around the use of AI in my first year in PV than I was able to see with any new technology in decades in financial services. I've noticed at quite a few internal meetings and conferences that PV professionals are still hesitant on the use of PV because they don't really understand it. They think it's dangerous. And I think the question is, how do we use it responsibly? There's a strong emphasis on human in the loop, on governance. AI shouldn't be seen as a shortcut. It should be seen as a support mechanism for expert judgment. And it feels like AI is at quite a mature starting point, and it can reap the benefits of, as long as the governance around it, the guardrails around it are correct.
And what's your favorite tool that you use, both in the work, professional life, and maybe in your private life?
So in the professional life, it's quite interesting because we're migrating from ChatGPT to Microsoft Copilot. So that's in professional life, and in personal life, I'm really intrigued, and I'm starting to use Gemini a lot now, particularly on images. So using a video from your phone to inquire about, you can go to your cupboard and take a video of the stuff that you have in your cupboard. So like, knock me up a recipe for these 6 items. I think that's really powerful.
I also tried it, and I really like it. That's great. Maybe a last question to you. I ask about AI and the innovation. So how the emerging technology like AI can support professionals and not replacing them.
Regulation doesn't slow down innovation. I think bad governance does. So if you build with responsibility from day one, whether that's in banking, whether that's been in PV, AI can really be transformative. Technology should enhance human responsibility, not replace it. So to sum things up, moving from finance to PV, it's taught me that industries can be different, but the responsibility behind the decisions remains the same, and you need that if you want to focus on innovation. And I think if you grab that challenge, wherever it approaches you in any form or shape, I would grab it and make the most of it. That would be my one takeaway, really.
Well, I really like how you put it. So what I'm taking from here, don't act by fear, and grab the opportunity whenever then they arrive. Take your chances. So it's great. Yes. So thank you very much for being my guest in the studio today, and for all our listeners, stay tuned and stay compliant.